I want to first start with returning to that political discussion about Albanese's prospects and Dutton's at the election. Let's bring in former Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger and Daily Telegraph journalist James Willis. Welcome to you both. Michael, what do you think about Peter Dutton's chances of winning the next election?
So I've said for several months now Peter Dutton's favourite to win the election, and I think as every day goes by, Sharri, his prospects are improving inch by inch. I don't think there's anything Albanese's done in the last few months, or has been able to do in the last few months, or can do in the next few months to turn this around. This is a worldwide phenomena against sort of these left-wing governments who have collapsed in the face of left-wing activism, left-wing demands, and the Western world is correcting towards the middle. And Albanese's out there with all of these other sort of hard left leaders who have been led by the nose by extreme left activists with all of their causes, and the middle working class Australians, like they are elsewhere in the world, have had enough. They're disgusted and want Albanese and these other governments to start concentrating on them. But they know Albanese can't and won't, and that's why I think he's going to lose.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, the polling is not looking good either. James, I mentioned the Herald's Political Monitor survey. It shows support for Albanese collapsing, but Dutton's support is rising, minus 12% a year ago to now a net rating of 0. So do you think that the issues Dutton is speaking about on a daily basis, some of them cultural issues like Australia Day, do you think this is winning over voters?
Well, I certainly think that it is a very significant problem when we've heard that Victoria, which has traditionally been the Liberal Party's worst performing seat, now there's some potential to win 3, 4, maybe 5 seats in Victoria. But the wider issue, I think, Sharri, I mean, obviously, a simple math sum indicates that with the swings left behind from the loss in 2022, that it's going to be hard mathematically for Peter Dutton to win the next election. However, the one point that I think can't be overlooked is you have a look at the Prime Minister's performance on a daily basis, and it's hard to pinpoint where this actually shifted, whether it be the Voice defeat, whether it be the stuff around his house on the Central Coast, maybe the Qantas stuff. But I just wonder whether he's actually up for what the next few weeks or few months actually entails. He looks frustrated, he looks tired. He's never really ever across his brief fully to an extent where he can actually make a personal comment. And you've just played that clip in regards to a question about mandatory sentences. Well, I mean, he's the Prime Minister. He's entitled to have some sort of overarching view, and we'd expect him to do that without people firing shots. I'd much rather him say, well, you know what, personally, I think that's a very sensible idea that should be investigated at a state level. Instead, he passes that. He passes the next thing. He is terribly advised. And as I say, I just wonder if he has enough puff left in him to get through this election. He looks tired, frustrated, and too often not across his brief.
I mean, how hard can it be as a Prime Minister to say, of course, someone who attacks a synagogue should go to jail? I mean, it's the most simple thing to say, but he can't say that. I mean, it's just absurd who this guy is that is leading our country. I don't know how we ended up with him in charge. Honestly, I shake my head. Michael, I want to ask...
Sharri, look at it this way. Look at it this way. Here's the answer to your question. He doesn't get it. He never has. No. He doesn't understand. This guy is 61, right? He's been in public office for 28 years. 28 years he's been a public figure, meeting tens of thousands of people a year. He went to his first bar mitzvah that he invited himself to in Perth a few weeks ago. What? No one had ever invited him to a bar mitzvah before? What does that tell you? This guy's got no Jewish friends. He doesn't know anyone in the Jewish community beyond superficial, hello, how are you? He doesn't feel it. He doesn't understand it, right? He's been rabbiting on against Israel ever since those puerile demonstrations he was involved in years and decades ago. This guy has had no Jewish friends throughout the whole of his life. And as I said, when you're invited to a bar mitzvah, as many people have Jewish friends have been over the years, if you've never been and you're 61, for goodness sake, right? He doesn't understand Israel. He doesn't understand the Jewish community. He never has. He never has. And Sharri, you know, it's now, 14 months, 15 months beyond October 7. We can talk all we want about the government doing something, getting it, understanding it. They never will, right? He just doesn't understand it, and nor does that appalling Foreign Minister Penny Wong. Well,
I actually think they do understand it, and they are horribly morally confused, and I think that's worse, Michael. I think that it says a lot about their character. It truly does. James, what do you think about this issue? You know, Albanese today rejecting the need for a national cabinet on anti-Semitism when this emergency has arisen under his watch.
Well, I think given some of the reasons that national cabinets have been held previously, it's a pretty standard request, and we have seen this horrific issue continue to grow. It is spreading. We've had issues across Sydney. We've had issues in other parts of New South Wales as well. We've had the horrific firebombing of the synagogue in Melbourne. And so we are now at a point where I think it would be pretty sensible to get the leaders of the country together and start actually coming up with some solutions. Michael's made a good point, and I think it's worth expanding on, that this has really highlighted the yawning gap over this issue in the Middle East in the Labor Party, because every time someone from the Labor Party makes a sensible decision, and I think in fairness and isolation, Mark Dreyfus going to Israel to try and repair some of the damage and some of the decisions we made on the international stage in isolation is okay. But even that trip had people in Labor saying, hey, there's a please explain here. Why is Mark Dreyfus doing this? Why is Mark Dreyfus cuddling up to Israel? We've had the Prime Minister do this. Chris Minns is doing it in New South Wales. But every time someone from Labor fronts up and says, hey, we can't be tolerating this in this country, then we hear other people in Labor. I will note there has been some senior Labor ministers in Sydney, Sharri, who have been very, very quiet on this issue. And I reckon it's a massive story that we have electorates in Sydney that have now large Muslim populations, and someone in polling has said, hey, you need to worry about your own seat here, stay out of this, because otherwise we're going to lose this seat or be in trouble like we've seen in parts of the UK.
Racism. Yeah,
correct. And they're showing no leadership. They've gone into hiding. And there's many of them in Sydney.
And we know who they are. We really do.
Absolutely.